Sharma, Environmental Sustainability Researcher.
Hi everyone. Hello everyone, this is Ashish Sharma. I've been working as an environmental sustainability researcher for a couple of years, and I got a chance to work with some of the prestigious institutions overseas. I worked in South Korea at Gwangju Institute of Science and Technology, then I went to Northwest Ohio State, worked with the University of Toledo on National Science Funded Research Project, then went to Macquarie University in Sydney, and Macquarie University was my last sort of affiliation. So, we have a buzz of this smart cities, going on. So we know that smart cities have traditionally been associated with we perceive smart cities as the drivers of creativity, innovation, and as the engines of our productivity, and the engines of our productive growth as well of the GDP of India. But then it's very critical to understand that the real drivers of these smart cities will not only be these smart cities, but then we need smart transportation, which will then support these engines of creativity and innovation to let us really embark upon our journey of realizing this vision of smart cities into a reality. So having said that, talking about intelligent transportation system in India, it surprises me because we haven't still done our basics right. So we have a lot of challenges. Indian transportation sector basically is confronted with lots and lots of challenges. So while we are talking about implementing and deploying smart technologies, big data analytics and predictive data analytics, Internet of Things and all that, but then there is a high time that we have a sort of break and look at some of the severe challenges which we are confronting right now. This is a very serious sort of problem and mess we are into. So there was this article published by the New York Times magazine, and they quoted the World Health Organization sort of statistics, and they said that Indian cities are the worst polluted cities in the world, and these are the numbers you can see in front of you in the screen. And our cities, Delhi and some of our metropolitan cities, the PM10 concentration in our cities is far worse than some of the top-notch cities of the world, and you can see the numbers that our cities are in fact 5 times worse in terms of PM10 concentration. Now this is not something, I was giving the same talk in Gwangju in South Korea, and the numbers, and we don't see any sort of improvement in Delhi's air quality, no matter what odd even formula or whatever formula you bring into, we need regressive, we need aggression and really tackling some of the serious challenges. So when we talk about transportation in India, it seems basically that the air pollution problem is a very serious problem, and it appears that Indian citizens are sort of missing this very fundamental right to breathe clean air. This is a very serious issue and a very serious mess that we should really get ourselves out of this. Now, when we talk about problem of air pollution, basically, then air pollution problem doesn't come as a standalone problem. It has sort of linked sort of impacts. Air pollution has health impacts, economic impacts, and then climatic impacts. In fact, there was this article which said that air pollution is the 5th largest killer in India. So it's critical that we sort out this problem now, or otherwise, Indian government will sort of end up spending billions and billions of dollars in mitigating health risks caused due to the poor transportation in India. Then we have road transport fatalities. We have 1.5 lakh deaths and road transport fatalities every year caused only due to poor air pollution and also due to mismanagement of the traffic around our roads. So it appears that while we have urbanization, we have this rapidly expanding cities which are not expanding in a very sustainable fashion. So what we need is that we really need to integrate our transport planning and the land use planning, and then we need to sort of strengthen our existing transport systems while implementing the latest technologies, while doing our basics right, such as building more and more pedestrian pathways, more and more skyway tracks, and more sort of bike lanes, so that we can sort out these problems of first mile and last mile connectivity, which then discourages the sort of people from taking the public transportation. Then we have issues such as congestion on the roads, and when we know from our engineering sort of bent of mind and sort of work which we have done, that when the vehicles are idling, then when we have congestion on the roads, then there are higher emissions from the vehicles, because the emission from the vehicles are again a factor of congestion and idling and all that. So now couple of these problems such as the air pollution definitely needs integrated and multi-layered and multi-dimensional sort of approach. We need economic policies, we need technological intervention, and then we need to sort of integrate some of the latest technologies, high-end technologies, which are proven technologies by some of the mega cities of the world. So when we talk about poor traffic management, then it's not a sort of rocket science to solve this problem of poor traffic management in our cities. In fact, we can sort of integrate these sort of latest technologies, such as we can make intelligent use of Internet of Things, big data, GPS, and then we can have more and more bike lanes, and then we can have Uberization of our transport system, so that we can have sharing of economy, so that we can reduce also the number of unnecessary transport trips which we are having. So again, the basic sort of message is that we need to integrate our transport with the land use planning, and it is very much doable. In fact, some of the best known cities of the world have already done it. We have the case studies of Bangkok in Thailand. We have Seoul in South Korea. I've been in South Korea, lived there for 2 years, and I've seen how sort of technology freak they are. So I mean, when people say that we don't have to sort of mimic the Chinese model, but then there is something going wrong basically when we do that, because Asian cities are having similar sort of demographics, similar sort of population. So Asian cities are the way to go forward. Like some of these well-performing Asian cities, I would say Seoul, Taipei, and Taiwan, and Bangkok. These have already made use of big data analytics. And then we have connected vehicle technologies. Like what we need is, when we are sort of having a vision for smart cities, then what we need to do is that we need to make a leapfrog to the smartest technologies in the world in order to really keep up pace with what's happening worldwide. So then we should have a vision that how can we sort of have more and more connected vehicle technologies, where vehicles are sharing information in real time through real-time apps and messages, where vehicles are not only interacting with themselves, but the vehicles are also interacting with the intelligent vehicle, intelligent transportation. So when the accidents occur, we can take a sort of precautionary measure rather than reacting when the accident have already been done. And we know from a previous sort of, the article we shared, that there are close to 1.5 lakh fatalities every year due to poor traffic management. So this is very much doable, and all these technologies have already been time tested and proven, and this we can do. And then we can have sort of fiber optical cable, as Prime Minister said in his election campaign, that the next generation highways will not be the highways of concrete and these sort of highways, traditional ones. The next generation of highways will be the fiber optic cables around the major road networks. So what we can do is that we can sort of leverage all these technologies and to really sort of integrate our strength in information technology, and then we can understand how to analyze big data, so that our transport is designed for the people. It's human-centric, it's human-focused, it's driven by the need of the people. It's people-centric. Right now, what we are having is our transportation is basically vehicle-centric. We have designed more and more roads, but we don't have any single sort of pathway for the pedestrians. That's why we have lots of casualties. So now these are some of the findings from our research which we did in South Korea. And the problem was basically motivated with the transport problem in India. Fortunately, my South Korean professor and advisor, he was very much into sort of expert into atmospheric sort of modeling, and most of his work is dedicated to black carbon emission into India, and then how it affects agriculture productivity, then economic impacts of that reduction in agricultural growth due to black carbon emissions and all that. So, this research was very much dedicated to the Indian sort of, air pollution problem, and we did our bit sort of, how much black carbon emission reduction is possible. So, then it also posed us with another challenge, that why does Indian vehicles emit so much pollution? In fact, why Indian vehicles are much more dirtier than some of the cleaner vehicles we see in the California or some of the advanced states of the foreign countries. I'm sure most of us have seen, the sort of, clean vehicle transportation we have in the foreign countries. So the reasons we came out were sort of linked with poor fuel quality. There is high sulfur content in our fuels, and then there is fuel adulteration cases which have been reported. And then the emission standards which we are aiming are also not very stringent. What we need to do is we need to transition to the more stringent Bharat Stage 6 emission standards or equivalent Euro 6 emission standards. And then we have issues such as missing emission control technologies, poor vehicles, older vehicles which are older than 10 years are emitting tons of particulate matter, which then leads to, air pollution, health impacts, and tons of, billions of dollars for India government end up spending and all that. So what we did is that we assumed a hypothetical scenario. Let us say we assumed a sort of year 2010 as the baseline year, and then we assumed that Indian transport makes a transition to a more stringent emission level. And after that, we did analysis. We find out that how much black carbon emission reduction is possible. Now, some of you who don't know black carbon is basically the soot, the sort of a smoke which we see from, vehicles. So that is the soot. I mean, we are exposed to that soot, sort of smoke. And that is very, very, fifth largest killer. I mean, this should be avoided. This is the lack of our sheer lack of awareness that we are lacking. We are solving all the problems, diabetes and cancer and all that, but we are not doing the basics right. So we came out with the numbers that as much as 50 to, hundreds of gigagram per year of black carbon emission is reduction in the transport sector is possible. And then this was then converted into equivalent black carbon radiative forcing. Now, black carbon radiative forcing is directly linked to climate change mitigation efforts. Climate change, all of us know, is a serious problem. And we have our commitments with the Paris Climate Change Summit. And this will be a direct contribution sort of efforts in mitigating those climate change sort of goals. And then we sort of quantified that in terms of billions of US dollars, which India can end up saving. So we find out that we can end up saving, quite a billion of dollars. And this money which can be saved by sort of, cutting down from expenses from the unnecessary preventable mitigation efforts for health diseases can be mobilized to other serious problems such as poverty problem in India, and there are other dozens of problems in India which we are tackling with. So these problems can then also be sort of tackled with the approach to meet our sort of requirement for meeting sustainable development goals. As all of us know, the sustainable development goals is another big thing, another sort of, our sort of mission we should aspire for as we are marching forward with and embarking for our mission of a smart city sort of, thing. So it doesn't make sense of talking about the smart cities without doing our basics right. Now, the previous strategy was to enforce stringent emission standards. That was the research we did in South Korea. And then this is another finding from a research project in Macquarie University in Sydney, which has already been published with Energy Journal. So what we find out is that, as we said previously, that there is not one single strategy to tackle with the problem of air pollution. We need a multi-layered, multi-dimensional approach to tackle with the air pollution issue. So another sort of strategy is to increase the uptake of alternative transport fuels such as biodiesel and such as battery electric vehicles and hydrogen fuel cell vehicle. And there is a good news for all of us that Tata has already come out with the first sort of hydrogen fuel cell vehicle, and Tatas are expert in cost cutting, and it will not be far when we will be driving with public transport system, that too with a hydrogen fuel cell sort of truck or buses. So we selected a couple of fuel types, conventional fuel types, biodiesel and biofuels and electricity. What we found that battery electric vehicles were the most costly option, but that the cost will come down as we improve our learning curve over a period of time. Then the other sort of promising fuel type is hydrogen fuel cell. In fact, environmental and economic impacts combined together, hydrogen fuel cell, according to our research, was the best performing sort of fuel. Now, as we make these choices of alternatives to the conventional, it's very much critical and important to apply a scientific rationale for the selection of these alternatives. Now, one of the scientific rationale we would recommend from our research is to adopt a life cycle assessment approach to make intelligent decisions for the alternatives. Don't just go by saying what others are doing or what Western countries are doing, but apply your own brain with a scientific sort of rationale and customize those solutions to the needs and requirements of Indian transport sector. Then only we can make a real sort of change and embark upon our journey of meeting this smart cities mission. So what we need to do is we need to look at the overall life cycle impacts, starting with the raw material acquisition to the production phase, processing of raw materials to the use phase of these products, and then end of life cycle phase, and then to the recycling stage. So as we discussed, there is not a one single strategy to solve the mass of transportation which we have presently. in our sort of transportation, we need strong government intervention in terms of moving to enforcing more stringent emission